It's been almost 6 years since the Whisper mission was released in Destiny 2, only a few months before all of us witnessed the tragic end of Cayde 6. What a happy little coincidence then that we get to jump back into this iconic exotic mission just a few months before we see our old pal again. I made a few videos on the original mission, the first of which ended up doing so well that it kickstarted my career as a Destiny 2 content creator. So what better way to pay homage to my first Whisper video than to break out our trusty Polaris lance and run through the mission solo flawless. Now yes, I am aware that the solo flawless triumph does not require the activity to be on legend difficulty, but I thought we might as well do it since a lot of these tips could help you solo players out there who want to finish your Whisper quest. Plus it's just a really fun challenge to try out, even though you don't get an emblem since it's not a dungeon. If you're proficient at jumping puzzles on Warlock, then you'll likely have an easier time completing this with no deaths by having Well of Radiance for the bosses. For the parkour and first few encounter rooms, I would stick on Dawnblade though, because of the ad clearing capabilities and additional mobility. I chose to run this on Titan purely because that's the class I've been maining this season, but you can absolutely make any class work for a solo flawless clear. Because of the extremely versatile sandbox that we're currently in, and with the upcoming prismatic subclass in the final shape, I don't think it's really that necessary to recommend specific subclasses for this guide. But if you still want to see what I used, I can show that now. I was running the Burning Maul Super, which is not the best by any means. The reason I chose it is literally just because I've been using it lately and I found it to be a lot of fun. For the aspects, I was using Sol Invictus, which really comes in handy in the final boss encounter, like the Ogre at the end, and Roaring Flames. And here's the fragments I was running. I didn't put too much thought into them or the mods I was running outside of 2 reserve mods for my heavy, so I'm sure you guys can optimize that a lot better, especially if you utilize armor charge and stuff like that. I also ran a healing grenade, which I would recommend if you're running a solar subclass. It really comes in handy, and if you're on Titan, Armamentarium is pretty good to double up on those healing nades. As for weapons, I tried out a handful of different ones across several runs, and the loadout I ended up really vibing with included the Riptide fusion rifle with chill clip, of course the Polaris Lance exotic scout rifle, and the fixed odds machine gun with the perk Incandescent. The fusion rifle was great for clearing out blights as well as helping to cut down some of the tougher enemies, and of course that chill clip really helped out. Another great fusion is the Season of the Wish fusion rifle Scatter Signal, which can roll with Overflow and Controlled Burst to get you extra damage if you can land all your shots. I made some really good use of Polaris Lance both in the first encounters and in the boss, but you can certainly bring along a better ad clearing weapon like Forbearance, Callus Mini Tool, or Sunshot to speed things up. Keep in mind that you will need some range though. Fixed Odds was an absolute monster in the first half of this mission, and you can get away with clearing almost everything up to the boss just using this weapon. A large part of this being so good was due to my role having the perk Incandescent, which is an easy S tier in the Whisper mission because of all the solar shields. And I mean, the perk Incandescent is just really good right now. You can get this from the Duality dungeon if you don't have it yet. Once I got to the boss encounter, I swapped out the fusion for my Supremacy with 4 times the charm and rewind rounds, since the mission gives bonus damage to snipers. I also temporarily swapped out the Polaris for the Callus Mini Tool, but in hindsight, I really didn't need to that much. I also switched out my machine gun for the reprised Edge Transit, which I really like this season, and it can roll with Bait and Switch, which is a 30% damage increase, or Explosive Light, which is a 60% damage increase if you collect 6 orbs. During Season of the Wish, rockets are probably the best heavy you could run right now due to the Argent Ordnance artifact perk, which is a 15% damage increase. If you get a god roll rocket like an Apex Predator, which is really good right now, which can roll with perks such as Explosive Light and Reconstruction, you're absolutely going to cook these bosses. And then make sure to have the Solo Operative artifact perk for another 15% damage when solo. Since I don't have a good Apex Predator, I'm just going to stick with the Edge Transit. All of these weapon picks are meant to act as a guideline for you to follow if you don't really know what to bring, but they're by no means the only weapons you can find success with. So many weapons are viable right now, and sometimes it just takes finding the right one that you're comfortable with. Since there's not a lot to say when it comes to the jumping puzzle part of this mission, I'll have any tips listed for it on the screen, but I'm going to stop talking until we get to the first encounter. So here's how I approached the first encounter. The very first thing I like to do is get rid of these 2 blight traps that blow up when you walk near them, so I can come back to this corner in a minute. Then I hop up behind the blight on the left and use it as cover from the 2 vandal snipers. I try and focus on taking down both the sniper and the captain quickly so that I don't lose half my health or get a blight thrown in my face. I then work on killing the other sniper on the right, still using the blight as cover. He tends to put up a shield, but with a little patience, we can get rid of him. Definitely leave all these blights up if you can. They work really well for protecting you in this room and also the following rooms. And they allow you to clear a significant portion of the enemies while taking very minimal damage. While you're behind this blight on the left, you can also kill some of the enemies near the other end of the room if you'd like, or you can save them for later. Then I'll step down on top of the blight and see if there's any thralls I can quickly kill before luring them to the corner where I removed the blights earlier. Standing on top of a blight lets you shoot inside it without being damaged by the blight itself. Forbearance or Sunshot or even just a grenade is really good for clearing the thrall, but you can use the machine gun like I did. Just try not to get swarmed and jump back up on the rocks if you need to. Once you clear most of those thralls, a few more enemies are going to spawn in, and once again I recommend using the blight as cover to get rid of them. This clears up a safe spot on the left side of the room, aside from those taken mines, to start clearing out the rest of the enemies. Sometimes they can be immune by standing in certain spots within the blight or their taken bubble, so just watch your health when going in for the kill. For this little cave area, I like to rush in and head to the back right corner, but sometimes the enemies can get in your way, and if that happens, you can either throw down your healing grenade, use your machine gun to just fire from the hip while you're moving, or panic super to get to safety. For most supers, you should get it back as soon as you get to the boss room, which is really nice to have when you get to the final boss room because there's some centurions and phalanxes there, so I wouldn't pop your super any later than this cave. The second room isn't too bad compared to how it was in the original version. They removed a lot of the wizards and acolytes, so what you're left with is just knights and hobgoblins. I think after all the runs, I found it easiest to prioritize the knights on the left first, and then worry about the guys on the right. If you keep sustained fire on the knights, they should flinch long enough, allowing you just enough time to kill them. Then you can knock down all the hobgoblins at the other end of the room by using the blight at the entrance as cover. Once you've cleared the whole room, take out the blight near the exit. Once the hallway is open, kill the first hobgoblin you can see without walking towards him. When he's dead, walk almost to the other end of the tunnel, like you're entering where the scions are, just to trigger the phalanx spawns and immediately turn around and sprint away. If you get enough distance between you and them, you can easily kill them before they blast you backwards with their shields. Then all you have to do is clear the remaining hobgoblins and scions in that final little section. Just make sure not to jump down with all the scions until most of them are dead. When falling down into the boss arena, aim for this triangular platform and then immediately sprint up to the right here. If you have your super, great, now is the time to unleash it on these enemies. If not, quickly use your heavy to mow down the phalanxes, and if you have to, you can duck into the corridor to your right. Just watch out for any Axion darts if the centurions are still alive. You can use your super and your heavy freely here because now is when we get to put down a rally flag. This is where I switched out my heavy to edge transit, swapped my rapid fusion rifle for the supremacy, and also temporarily swapped out my Polaris Lance for Callus Mini Tool, although I think it would have been better to stick on Polaris Lance with the order that we're doing the bosses in here. You can spawn one boss at a time, which will make this encounter a lot easier to solo, but you can also pop all 3 at once if you want to give yourself an extra challenge. I actually got my solo flawless triumph on the run where I spawned all the bosses at once, and while it was really fun and very hectic, I definitely wouldn't recommend it, and I barely finished with like less than 40 seconds left. Just having to manage one boss at a time made everything much easier, and I had way more time to spare. The left box is going to spawn the Taken Knight that shoots fire. He's pretty slow and has a very easy to hit crit spot. The middle box spawns the Taken Captain, who moves around quite a lot and spams endless Taken Blights at you. And his crit spot is pretty difficult to hit. And the right box spawns the Centurion, who is not too slow but not too fast either. He stays mostly in the middle of the arena and has a crit spot that is sort of medium difficulty to hit. His Axion Dart attack is probably the most dangerous thing about him. So I prefer to spawn the bosses in order from left to right. This will spawn in the Knight first, and lets me dump all my sniper ammo into his crit spot with relative ease. And I can use some of my heavy here to save my super for the next boss. The caves on the side of this room are your best friend, and they're going to allow you to chip away at the bosses from a relatively safe location. Just watch out for the wizards when they spawn. If you do kill both of the wizards, they will respawn in a short time, so it can be helpful to leave one alive as long as it doesn't start rushing towards you. When the boss is defeated, it's going to spawn in a bunch of Minotaurs, but you can ignore them and just shoot the box in the middle to spawn in the Taken Knight. Lead all of the enemies over to the cave on the right and start killing the Minotaurs and the Vandals. I would recommend taking care of the Vandal Sniper who spawns across the room, but if he's too difficult to kill, he will despawn once you kill the boss anyway. Because I was on Burning Maul, I was able to pop my super with a few enemies in front of me and kill them while also damaging the boss. Depending on the super or subclass you're running, it might just be easier to kill the Minotaurs and Vandals first, and then pop your super for the boss. Once I've used up my super, this is where I'll use more of my heavy. It can be a little sketchy to use rockets and grenade launchers in this tunnel, so if you're worried about that, you can always exit the other end of the tunnel to try and get a better angle. Just watch out for his Taken Blight attacks, which he usually throws if there's a little bit of distance between you and him, and watch out for that Vandal Sniper if you left it alive. The healing grenades really come in clutch for this guy. Once you kill the captain, all the enemies will despawn, but some more Minotaurs will spawn even before you summon the Centurion boss. So just shoot the Centurion's boss, which is the one on the right, then you can move to the cave we were just in and start chewing through the enemies. Be very careful of his Axion darts, as they may sneak around the corner and take a chunk out of your health very quickly. Polaris Lance isn't going to do much here, so you might want to switch to another ad clearing weapon for the meantime, until the Minotaurs and the Red Bar Centurion is dead. There should only be a handful of Scions around the room, so you can use this opportunity to scavenge for ammo. As long as you're keeping track of the Axion darts, you can pretty safely move around this encounter space. Once you run out of ammo, definitely crutch on that Polaris. Find a good spot where you can either pop in and out of cover, or avoid the Centurion's primary fire by walking back and forth, and then sit there and just plink away. Once you've killed him, use the couple seconds in between the Centurion dying and the Ogre spawning to collect any scattered ammo. Then make your way into some cover and take out the wizards with your Polaris Lance. This can be a little annoying to do when the Ogre starts lumbering in front of you, but you can usually shoot through his immune shield as long as you aren't hitting the boss itself. You might need to reposition around the room several times to get a good angle. After doing a bit of damage to the boss, he's going to spawn in Shadow Thralls. Be very careful of these guys when you're zoomed in with a sniper or using an explosive weapon. Being on Titan with Sol Invictus made them pretty easy to deal with since I could just sit in my sunspot and not really have to worry about dying. When the boss gets to half health, they will spawn in 2 more wizards and some blights around the area. You can actually kill at least one of the wizards by climbing on top of the pillar here and using the blight as cover from the wizard and ogre, and while keeping you away from the Shadow Thrall. Although the ogre will eventually make its way to a position where it can shoot you, so you'll want to be quick with this. The second wizard is a little more difficult to kill. For this I move to the left side of the arena into the left cave, and again I use the blight as cover from the ogre. There is a little ledge you can jump on here that might let you escape from the Shadow Thrall a bit, but you should still be cautious. Then you can just go back to chipping away at the boss with Polaris until you either kill him or get your super back and then use that to kill him. If you move around the encounter space enough, the boss will eventually follow you, which can let you temporarily reposition to a higher elevation place away from the Shadow Thrall. This makes it a lot easier to do sustained damage, even if you don't have your well or you're on a hunter. It doesn't matter if you finish with 5 minutes or 5 seconds left. As long as you focus, play smart, and play safe, you will finish it. I hope this guide was helpful whether you're doing the solo flawless or just trying to beat it alone on Legend, and if you enjoyed, please leave a thumbs up and subscribe so you don't miss any more videos like this one. Let me know in the comments if you've gotten the solo flawless yourself on this yet, and whether or not you did it on Legend. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.